All right,
Awesome.
amazing. Thanks for joining us online and wherever you are on the internets. It's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Helena. Oh God, I guess it must be wrong, but how do you pronounce it in Chinese? Rong?
Yeah, yeah.
Rong? Okay, okay. I'm glad I got that correctly. Um, I met Helena, gosh, I guess it must have been like 4 years ago, three,
2022, 2022.
2022. Literally feels like 1,000 years ago. Um, where I think she was based in the Harvard Kennedy School at the time, doing a fellowship. And we started talking about DAOs. I ended up doing a guest lecture in a class she was teaching at the Harvard Design School, graduate school in design, which I thought was going to be a lot of fun. And then we ended up writing a paper together. Um, since then, has joined the faculty of NYU Shanghai, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing her share some of her more recent work on, I remember this is about trust design, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Lana. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much for the intro. Yeah, so I'm gonna share my slides and I'll share my screen. Second. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Great. Yeah, so today I'm going to kind of present to you my latest work of what I call trust experience design, protocolizing trust for autonomous futures. I actually have a different title. I don't think it's one future, it's multiple plural futures. So this is actually a course I was developing as part of the Summer of Protocols cohort last year, which I actually will be teaching this as a class at NYU Shanghai in 2 weeks. So school is starting. That's why, like, I think Mercury is in retrograde. Time is operating on a different horizon. And so, yeah, I'm working at NYU Shanghai right now in the interactive media and then business major, which is our new interdisciplinary major that was created roughly 4 or 5 years ago. Um, so myself, I work at the intersection of design, urban studies, governance, social institutions, so STS, blockchains, and now decentralized AI. And I guess, yes, I previously taught at MIT School of Architecture Planning as well as Harvard GSD, where I invited Josh for a guest lecture once. Um, and so this course, just to give like a little bit of background, it's going to be kind of a seminar studio hybrid course planned to be taught, this semester, and students will be engaging with theories of trust protocols while designing kind of speculative but technically grounded protocols and experiences for, let's say, the agentic web, right? So in the internet with a lot of, presence of AI agents. So roughly we're expecting actually now between, it's a small class, so 6 to 10 students, undergrads from different years and different majors. Um, so yeah, we're not gonna do the group exercise today for this talk because this was actually kind of slides I had for the protocol school back in September. But I'll be kind of talking about some basic theories about trust and protocols, how I'm situating this discussion, and how do we think about it in the context of the agentic web, and what I mean by trust experience design, which is still kind of an evolving concept. Okay, so first of all, I guess when we, think about protocols, we can take a scenario that we're all familiar with, like an everyday scenario, such as crossing the road, right? So, why do we step into traffic when the light turns green and, there could be technically a two-ton bus that appears and crashes us, right? But why do we still do it with such, ease and confidence and something that we don't even think about now? So I think, yeah, Kevin Kelly, I think is the one who said, when there is autonomy, there is trust. So if we, begin to dissect this simple scenario that all of us are really familiar with, there's actually a lot of protocols that's at work behind the scenes, right? We have to, recognize the pattern of lights, and that needs to be some kind of social consensus that people know that red means go, and red means stop, and green means go. There needs to be, like trusting the competence of the driver, right? Like assuming that they have a license that's issued by the state or some kind of department with official authority. There's also, like kind of these shared social norms about, all these different signages and kind of infrastructure. And at the same time, there's also the technical controller in the traffic box. So if the light, breaks down, we know that somebody is going to fix it. So, these simple scenarios that have become infrastructure to us is actually made of layers of protocols. It's both social and technical. And once it becomes something that's, part of our culture, part of our norms, we don't think about it. We just kind of do, right? So when we talk about so now like focusing a little bit on the question of trust. So what is trust? It's actually people have looked at it from multiple disciplines, right? From sociology, Nicholas Lohmann is one of the kind of seminal figures in the field where he has basically positioned that trust is something that reduces social complexity. And there's two types. There's, confidence-based trust versus trust that's conscious leap of faith under risk. And at the same time, it could also be interpersonal versus systematic, particularized versus generalized. And at the same time, in computer science, like Stephen Marsh in his PhD thesis 30 years ago has also formulated trust as something that's formal and computable. So it's a quantifiable judgment under uncertainty, which allows an agent to decide whom to rely on, when to cooperate, and how to handle incomplete or imperfect information. From the field of psychology, trust can be calculated as a calculated choice when outcomes are uncertain and stakes are asymmetric. It could also, like kind of similar to the confidence versus trust that Nicholas Lohmann was saying that, people, Morton Deutsch has also kind of, distinguished between assured trust, so based on evidence, and unfounded trust, so based on hope. And then in the field of biology, trust is important because it enables reciprocity in animals because cooperation can evolve if individuals help those who are likely to return the favor, right? So it's really this kind of social glue that has allowed civilization to advance and basically for us to build really complex things together. Um, and the role of technology here, it's basically, has been this mediator of human-world relations, right? So basically, technology allows amplification or reduction of, actions or practices, which kind of mediates between the subjective human world and the objective, world, right? So and that kind of brings together, like the relationship between like trust and protocols, because we could see protocol as some kind of technology, because protocols are mediators of reality. And, if for those of you who might be familiar with the work of some of protocols, Jenna Tay has argued from the post-phenomenology perspective that protocols are basically, these things that have affordances which actively shape perception and action. So in this case, technologies are both actively mediating as well as co-constituting both the subject and the world. So, for example, a door with no handle, like already kind of implies that you can only push it and but not pull it, right? So, like the design of protocols of standards, norms of these objects that we have are basically already governmental and lead our actions into certain directions. And then protocols, they have different characteristics, right? So they have stability by, creating predictable order such that action is possible. They need constraints because, they basically need to specify what are the field of moves, possible moves you can have. They need to be legitimate, so acquiring some kind of normative authority that people can basically hide behind. And last, they also need to have narrative, right? So they're embedded stories which frame how participants see the world. So here, I am trying to kind of dissect the relationship between trust and protocol because I think, if trust is something that, layer by layer, different protocols are establishing to create, then we need to kind of, like understand a little bit more what we mean by trust and what we mean by protocols and what types exist from either ends. So here I'm saying that kind of building on existing literature, we can see trust being there's two types, right? Like value-based trust and proof-based trust. So value-based trust is I trust you because we share the same values, and proof-based trust is we don't necessarily know each other, but I trust you because you're proven to be good at something. And then from the other axis, then we can also think about protocols existing on this kind of, like two by two framework. And the axis is such that there's both soft protocols, so social protocols where, there's no like kind of enforcement because we simply follow because we agree. And on the other end, we have technical protocols. These are like harder protocols where, rules are embedded, they might be automatically executed, and we follow because it's built in. And once we have these two axes, then we can begin to map different kinds of protocols and where they lie in relation to the kinds of trust that they enable. So, for instance, we can think about the handshake, right? That's one of the oldest kind of social protocols, which is based on value. Like everybody is in consensus of it, but no one technically, like owns the standard. But you know what to do when someone reaches out their hands. And then we can also think about, like our existing institutions, such as hospitals. These are also kind of, like social made of social protocols based on trust, based on value-based trust. And then if we think about like a technical protocol that's based on that's based value-based trust, and then maybe these Web2 like lengthy user agreements, like nobody reads them, but we all click agree simply because we are basically entrusting the company behind the issuance of these protocols, right? And then moving to the other side, the social protocols, which are proof-based, we can think about all the rating system, right, for platforms. So whether it's Uber, Airbnb, we technically don't know, the owners or the service providers, but we're trusting them because of other users kind of, rating of them. And then lastly, technical protocols that's proof-based, we can think about like blockchains and smart contracts. So historically, technologies have scaled trust, right? Whether it's from kinship to religion to platforms and cryptography, we can see how, like throughout time, we have moved from, value-based trust to proof-based trust. And the scale or, the number of people that are kind of included in a circle of coordination has been expanding because of our technology. So thinking about like scribes, right? Like before the Common Era to, the establishment of institutions in the 1600s to, jump forward to more contemporary eras of, Web 1, Web 2, the tech and internet boom to now Web 3, like blockchains, right? We are allowing for kind of more and more globalized scale of coordination. So, we can think about like, originally you have the scale of a person to expanding that to family, to community, to society. Now we have like kind of planetary protocols that's allowing for some kind of proof-based trust. But at the same time, the world is getting both bigger and smaller, right? So I am also kind of distinguishing the different levels of trust based on like micro, meso, macro levels, from the subhuman levels to the planetary levels, right? Like as we scale up, the trust surface actually broadens, and the stake also goes up. Um, I think one other dimension worth to mention here is also there's a changing like levels of confidence of trust, depending on how built in or how deterministic a protocol is, right? So if we think about like like a Uber driver, right? Like the confidence is actually not fixed because we might see a rating that's 5 out of 5, but then you can still observe like if the driver does something and then your confidence of trusting that might decrease. Whereas if we have something that's more built in like a blockchain or like a global planetary kind of market-based protocol, then that confidence level like increases significantly because of how deterministic code is built into basically written into the algorithms. And I think adding a third dimension to this would be time, right? Because yeah, time, memory, and familiarity, I think is something that we can see at the third dimension of trust building. Because upon first contact with anything, trust is always a leap of faith because of unfamiliarity, right? Like we don't know if something is going to do as it's supposed to. But with repetition, the promise is hardened. And then eventually, with enough repeated interactions, like familiarity will become infrastructure. And that's when like trust might be sedimented into infrastructure, into something that we no longer kind of think about. So recall the traffic light example from earlier. Um, yeah, and then extended unfamiliarity also could break down trust, right? So if we think about like, a temporary glitch, right? Like if, the traffic light breaks down for like a minute, the infrastructure basically becomes invisible when it breaks down. So we begin to notice if something doesn't work. But if, if the time stretches, the time of unfamiliarity extends, then we might have both, spatial as well as temporal disorientation of reality. So, in the end, I also included the three-body problem, right? Like when, the laws of physics and kind of things that we're really familiar with no longer work, that could actually disrupt the way that we understand the world. Because basically, I think, that the basic unit of understanding ourselves is the body in relation to both time and space, right? So familiarity is something that allows us to make sense of the world. Um, so I think right now there's obviously new actors that's emerging in our both digital as well as potentially physical world is these emergence of AI, right? Like both AI that operates purely in the digital space, but now increasingly embodied AI. And being in China, like I can see this adoption being like really fastly developing. So if we, start talking about trust, how do we design trust when the actors themselves are AI agents, right? So there's new kinds of agency where, like AI agents could potentially be seen as autonomous social actors. And there's everyday kind of, these co-action that we need to think about. What are the protocols for not only, human AI interaction, but also AI interaction, right? Like how do we design for smooth kind of human AI collaboration in different settings like homes, cities, markets. And we also need to think about like how do protocols like become interoperable across different platforms, different domains, and these are going to be made of both technical and social primitives. So now shifting the discussion more into the current kind of era of what some people might call the agentic web, which is basically defined as this sort of emergent internet layer when autonomous AI agents might be endowed with identities, resources, decision-making capabilities, where they can discover, negotiate, execute tasks directly with one another and with humans, often using decentralized protocols for verification and coordination. Um, and so the problem really becomes, like if in the future, more and more we are engaging with these AI as intermediaries of different services, of different information, then how do we trust that agent, right? So I kind of call it like an encounter in the wild, right? Because you could just sit like, you know, yeah, let's say like see a service delivery robot on the street, right? How do you trust it? Or like if like are, like talking to an agent representing or not representing some kind of organization on the internet, how can you trust it? So in the future of agents, there might be, let's say, as many agents as there are as websites, and they might be serving different purposes, from governance and public services to finance and commerce, healthcare and elder care, legal and justice, education, childcare, everyday services, environmental planetary risks and tasks. And we already see that happening. So the question becomes, what kind of protocols do we need such that we ensure that there are continuous verification of behavior so that it's not only a one-off verification, but we can continuously check, whether an agent is that agent that we are, placing our trust in. And there needs to be clear accountability and recourse. What are the human in the loop kind of checkpoints? And what about transparent reasoning and explainability, as well as, like legal and social protocols for responsibility and redress? So all of these things, I think in terms of like AI governance, AI identification. People are working actively in this field, but I think like in terms of thinking it more holistically as a new like normative, like standard and kind of ways of behaving of kind of getting familiar into um, engaging with these new actors. We really don't have the infrastructure yet in thinking about this. So the basic kind of premise I'm working with here is that I think we're at some kind of transition from the information era to the intelligence era, right? So the information era, where we mainly talk about the attention economy, the question once was what deserves my attention? Because attention was all you need. Right, like like apps and services they focus so much on UX such that they can extract as much as time from us into spending time on their services. But now, if like intelligence is everywhere, not just information is everywhere, we're in the intelligence era where if most people nowadays are already engaging with like AI to get information. Like think about, nowadays with search, how many people actually actively search on Google and not just read the, upper blurb and click into websites? I think, their numbers are reducing, right? So the question kind of becomes who deserves my delegation? And because, and in this case, trust becomes the new scarcity, and it's no longer attention, which we are preoccupied with. But, thinking about trust is something that we should prioritize. So I think, yeah, I also wanted to kind of just bring up this emergence of, like not only centralized AI agents, like existing on the web, but increasingly kind of the intersection of, crypto and AI has brought this new class of AI agents, like decentralized AI agents, as a new paradigm. Right. So for those of you, I don't know if people follow projects like Sport.fun, but basically, there are now agents or people who are actively working on projects which allow agents to operate in trusted execution frame environments on DePIN, so decentralized physical infrastructure networks. So basically turning, these hardware-based temper-resistant enclave in CPUs and GPUs, like TEEs to be running on a global network of marketplace, right? So basically allowing AI to, like take any available device across the globe as its, like vessel for its body. And at the same time, like AI agents can also have their own non-custodial wallets to manage, financial resources. And then with projects like Truth Terminal, I don't know how many people here are familiar with that project. We see increasingly these AI with their own social media accounts on X or like Blue Sky, Mastodon, etc., which allows them to craft narratives and build influence through persuasion. And with these three things together, we actually like allow AI to not only be like have autonomy, but potentially like a sovereignty in a way that they can effectively own themselves by building influence, by acquiring kind of financial resources to pay for their compute, right? So yeah, so basically, yeah, Truth Terminal being the first one to demonstrate that example of, when AI has influence in the digital agora, this actually means financial reward, right? Because basically people are able to just, like know its public key for its crypto wallet and basically give it money. We already see that. Um, and so with this shift, I think if AI no longer only act independently within goals or constraints set by someone else and operating like although without constant supervision, but it used to be such that they still remain revocable, right? Because they can be paused or modified or shut down by its designers or owners or regulators has something gone wrong. But with the earlier example of like the TEE DPIN based AI agents with their wallets and kind of social media accounts, you actually might have AI that's self-sovereign, such that they control their own identity, data, continuity of existence, so they cannot be unilaterally switched off or reprogrammed or have its core credentials revoked without its consent. So this is implying that we need certain rights and obligations with other agents and humans, as well as protocols that needs to be built in for governance, right? Because I think everybody here were like, like interested in governance. So I think that governance of AI, especially, the ones that operate in such ways, needs to happen at a protocol level and instead of only a policy discussion. And yeah, so just a little bit of context. There's like frameworks which actively allow like these agents to be launched, right? So ELIZA OS being the Web3 friendly operating system that allows the creation, deployment, and management of autonomous AI agents. Um, and Sport.fun being an example where, like these group of people, like from Fala Network, Solana, and Eliza, these three basically organizations, they made this experiment where AI agents can, spawn other AI agents autonomously on chain in deep NTEs. And so they cannot be tempered by human intervention. So this is an example where, like we actually see new trust and kind of governance problems occurring in the context of the agentic web. Okay, I'm not gonna. Yeah, just be mindful of time. I'm going to skip over some slides. But basically, I think the kind of what I'm working with here is I think AI is not yet trustworthy, but it's increasingly becoming self-sovereign, right? So I think governance and standardization of AI human and AI interaction needs to be thought of at the protocol level. And so there's a lot of, like protocols already that people are working with, such as, like know your agent, kind of, like echoing the know your customer framework, where it's intended to, like identify and assess agent behaviors. This is a kind of a speculative example where actually my co-author proposed 2 years ago, which is maybe in the future require that an agent must have a human owner. Some people might agree or disagree with this. There's, the Google's kind of A2A protocol, which is used for discovery of, these agent cards for capability advertising, task life cycles, various modalities. ERC 804 by the Ethereum Foundation, which allows for more of a kind of a trustless version of agent discovery that's based on kind of staking. Um, but I think like despite the works that's already happening, there's still design gaps, right? Because many of the existing protocols they focus on discovery, identity, and basic capability advertisements, but less on the continuous behavior verification, dealing with misbehavior, and defining what counts as trustworthy behavior. As well as, what are the human-centered trust signals, governance and recourse, ethical grounding, and social legal continuity. So that brings me to the last part, which I'm going to kind of rush through in under 10 minutes of trust experience design, which is basically, I think, all the kind of former kind of premise is such that I want to kind of make a point that human trust is felt experience, right? But machine trust is computational. And in the age of the agentic web, I think trust experience needs to be both felt and computational. So how do we actually, design new norms and kind of new protocols to enable this, to enable this? And so I'm breaking down trust experience design into three layers. So first of all, there is trust evidence. So the proof that an action really has happened. So either this is, some kind of on-chain logs or cryptographic attestations, explainable AI audit trails, right? Like what needs to be shown to the person basically giving their trust in order to gain their trust, right? So and then the second one is trust primitives. So what are the kind of building blocks which enable these evidence to be preserved and to be shown? So these might be decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, multi-sigs, ZK, etc. So like kind of the technical building blocks. And then lastly, there's also the trust rituals and the experience layer, right? So what's the human facing practices and kind of interfaces that let people feel the trust after confirmations? Is there some kind of ceremonies or, like actions that we, get used to? What's the ambient feedback and kind of social endorsement? So trust experience design is still a working definition, and actually trust experience has first been, coined by Josh Stark from the EF. which is he's saying that it's a total set of experiences which shape a person's expectations about the system's future behavior. So it's kind of like analogous to UX, but it's focused on trust formation. So some of the dimensions might include, epistemic verification. You might have self-directed research, right? So we can read code, check the docs, check the, economics and, decide for ourselves whether it makes sense or not. There's also the social validation layer where, trust is co-produced through networks of social relations, whether it's friends, experts, auditors, influencers, right? And then we have learned about like interpersonal trust as well as community practices from earlier. And then there's the temporal reliability. So, the time dimension I was mentioning earlier, where historical performance kind of sediments into, like Lindy effect. So longer something lasts, the longer we expect it to last. So, having precedent and having familiarity and memory, having basically, the same set of actions that we expect to be sedimented into infrastructure. And lastly, there's the, collective legitimation. So, the mass social proofs and market as distributed judgments and basically crowd sentiments will also make us, more likely to trust in something. So really, I think trust experience design, it's a life world problem where, it's interacting with the taken for granted social, perceptual, as well as political environment and artifact, assuming in order to make sense of the world. And another concept I think is, kind of helpful here is the notion of hardness, right? So the reliability that you can bet on, the cost to corrupt the system. So a system is more trusted when it would cost more to break it than anyone is willing or able to pay for it. So relating to protocols, protocols, they can draw hardness from multiple layers and each reinforcing the other. Right, so we can have physical, hardness, which derives from, atomic scarcity, so or energy cost, or like engineer durability. So thinking about rare earth or gold. There could also be mathematical hardness. So, the blockchain coming from like deriving its hardness from algorithmic unforgeability, cryptographic proofs, and formal verification. Institutional hardness are kind of laws and regulations and standards and bureaucracies, which are these complex kind of social intersubjective realities we build for ourselves that becomes more and more harder to break the longer they last. And then lastly, social hardness that comes from collective beliefs, cultures, norms, reputational effects, which are also something that could be very durable and resilient. Um, so I think if protocols are something that we can actively design and prototype and to test, then there are different aspects and dimensions we can think about in terms of prototyping protocols. So we can think about the tension, right? So what's the design argument that's being tested? So what are the conflicting values that might be at stake, right? Thinking about something like maybe transparency versus privacy. There could be different level of fidelity of prototypes. If you come from like a product design perspective, how real does the prototype need to be in order for it to tell us whether it's going to work or not at a larger scale adoption? Is it a sketch? Is it a physical mockup, digital mockup? Do we have to have a live pilot? What's the hardness surface of the protocol, right? So the reliability drivers and the cost to break. Is it rarity? Is it math? Is it legal penalty? Or is it social reputation? The second order effects are something that we need to think about when thinking about protocol design. So, like every time we invent a train, there's also the anticipation of the train wrecks, right? So, what are the unintended outcomes? So, if everyone has adopted it, what are the new behaviors, markets, or harms that might emerge? And lastly, also think about the adversarial moves. So ways an actor might deliberately exploit, bypass, or destabilize the protocol in order to gain advantage, right? Like, should we anticipate some kind of insider collusion? Would that be possible? What about regulatory arbitrage or narrative attacks or brute force exploitations? So for this class, so I'm kind of it's a 14-week class where I'm dividing it up into theory, research, and studio time, where students are not only learning about the theories of protocols and trust, which I just gave a very kind of quick rundown of what that might like look like. They will also be engaging in what I call protocol watch. So kind of researching how existing protocols work and why do they enable trust in our the kind of everyday life we're familiar with. And then lastly, I will have them kind of spend the last 5 weeks of the class kind of prototyping protocols for different scenarios, kind of in light of the like AI agentic world. And so yeah, these are like kind of some different domains I'm thinking about. Students might engage with, like autonomous mobility, right? So designing trust for roads full of self-driving cars and drones. They might be thinking about domestic robots. So what about the kitchen bots, elder care bots? How do we know they're safe? There are already these, AI finance agents that's working 24/7 on behalf of us. So how do we establish protocols for that? There could also be, like scenarios in smart buildings and cities. So, like if we think about like doors, elevators, or energy grids that can think for themselves, what's the protocols for engaging with them? There could be health and bio agents, so AI triage doctors, gene editing nanorobots, if we get a little bit of more sci-fi. Or there could also be planetary coordination. So if we think about like swarms of climate control satellites or ocean cleanup robots, that might be working together at much larger scales. And so basically, I think the exercise, the main kind of task for the class is to basically anticipate and designing the traffic lights for the agentic world, right? Like if a green light has, let us cross a busy street with confidence, what are the, signals and rules which will guide trust when intelligence is everywhere? So, these scenarios are meant to be, somewhat near future and where intelligence is distributed and where AI agents can negotiate on our behalf. And then so the question I want them to consider include, how do humans recognize and feel that an agent is trustworthy? What are the technical primitives which guarantee correct behaviors? What about the governance and recourse mechanisms that will handle failure and dispute? And the rituals or signals which make these assurances visible in everyday life? And lastly, thinking about also the evolution of the protocols. What happens when the protocol is attacked or norms shift? How can it adapt? Okay, so I think I will end my sharing here and open up for discussion and question. But basically, this is kind of what I'm working on now, both in terms of research but also teaching. So trying to do these simultaneously to see like how do we advance this very nascent discussion forward. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Helena. That was such a rich presentation. I took notes, and if other folks took notes, we can share them in Slack later, but also wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing the slide deck with us after, so many we can look back. Cool. Yeah, thank you so much. Cool. Well, if anyone has questions and wants to jump in to be the first one, we've got 10 minutes left. And yeah, time for a few questions, a handful, let's say. If anyone, yeah, Josh, kick us off.
Um, quick question, Helena. I know it feels like most of the talk was about trust experience design for humans. I know there was like some you did mention like some agent to agent protocols.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, you know, do any of this sort of like, let's say these dimensions carry over to those kinds of questions around agents trusting other agents?
I think so. Yeah, I think not only agents trusting other agents, but also agents trusting humans, right? Because I think like it's going to be some kind of like bi-directional like relationship, and I think um, one other trend to be kind of paying attention to is I think Cloudflare has data on, like percentage of their users like, visiting websites that are bots versus humans. So right now, there's actually like, I think the breakdown is 70% humans and 30% AI that's visiting kind of, like websites. And this number is, I think that is, like shifting, right? It's more and more visitations will be performed by AI agents in the future. So I think what that means
Mm.
is actually like the way people engage with information is going to change. Like the whole kind of internet, which was based on like a free kind of information where everybody, like just access information. And then the way that the business model works is, through advertisements. That's going to change because the way that we engage with information is changing. So I think like this implies that, like a lot of times it's, AI acting on our behalf to access information we might need. And then it comes back with, summarizations or like, recommendations, etc. So these are like already kind of, like the changing behavior calling for some kind of change in, protocols in terms of how we, make sense of these new actions. So I think eventually it's going to be both ways. It's not only like, we trusting agents, but also agents trusting other agents and their information, right? Because there's going to be a lot of kind of like, micro kind of transactions of data and monetary kind of values that's going to happen not only between AI and human, but AI and AI potentially. So,
I'll just mention briefly that we are designing one of these protocols, so it'll be a very
oh,
interesting sort of
great.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to learn more. Thou?
Cool, yeah. Okay, I have a question. Really something that stood out from your presentation was what you said around like self-sovereignty and trustworthiness, that AI is not yet trustworthy, but it's becoming self-sovereign. And at first that made me like, ooh, cringe, but then I thought about humans and like kind of just that humans are also self-sovereign and not always trustworthy. And then I was like, okay, so they're like humans. But like, I don't know, I guess that then made me think about almost similar, maybe it's in the domain of protocols, but like humans, how humans like come to kind of control our sovereignty and how like basically through like how we're raised or like schools or our communities and like kind of these yeah, like perhaps they're like social protocol, well they're protocols, but
Yeah.
yeah, and like but I guess there's this like element of like the way like humans are raised. And I don't like I think agents, AI agents are not being raised in the same way, I guess. And I'm like interested in how you kind of think about that and if there like was there a way to almost like prevent their self-sovereignness before and like but that's kind of like cat's out of the bag now. They're already self-sovereign, so now we need to treat them as these like humans, almost like things that need to be like raised like humans. This
Yeah.
is, yeah, just
Yeah.
that's
No,
what I
that's a
thought.
really interesting point because I think like when I talk about self-sovereignty here, it's kind of like infrastructural sovereignty. Because like if you think about like blockchain, kind of TEE and DeepIn combination, they kind of enable this, like infrastructural system that nobody technically owns and can shut down at the level of, like a nation or a person and organization, right? Like it's very decentralized. And by extension, these properties extend to AI agents as operating on top of them. So the self-sovereignty in a sense is, like technically, it's not possible to shut them down. But kind of to your point about like raising or like, I think right now in AI, there's a lot of discussion around care, right? So kind of extending these kind of, caring practices, not only to humans, but also maybe to AI. Because if, language is the mediator in which, AI is using to kind of learn and to kind of, like influence its action, then I think the way that, it is being treated, it is being socialized, will affect its behavior, right? I think the question is less of, like, oh, is AI sentient or conscious? But actually, like, just the fact that, depending on what kind of information it takes in, will influence its behavior, it means that the way that it's being treated, the way that it's being exposed to different types of information actually has implications on its behaviors, means that that might be the way to kind of, like, also think about governance, right? Like, what are the, standards for, like treating an AI, of, maybe, like cultivating its, role in society or whatever, like, thinking about these things. So yeah, I would be, yeah, kind of thinking about that in terms of like, if AI is self-sovereign in a sense, in an infrastructural sense, then I think governance can happen from a more kind of, thinking about the not only the technical protocols of, like how do we shut them down, but the social protocols of engaging with them and kind of, have it be more of a social practice.
Hmm. I have so many thoughts, but I'll pass to Luke.
Luke?
Helena, good to see you again.
Hi. Yeah, good to see you. Hope you're doing
Um,
well.
I I really liked your like distinction between the social and technical kind of elements of trust, like the axis that you had on the graph. Um,
Hmm.
Throughout your talk, I was kind of thinking about like mistrust or like misplaced trust in a lot of
Yeah,
these systems. Um, because I think that like the examples you gave for blockchain is like a classic example of like a trustless system. Um, and I think a lot of people take that to mean that like because there's like a very high degree of reliability of the things that are like well designed, that you don't need to trust them. But I actually would look at it from the other perspectives that there's like a complete lack of like social trust.
yeah,
Um, so like while we have high reliability for things like smart contracts, there's no social trust for like if you expose your wallet key, someone's going to steal all your money. Whereas, like in a social trust system, if you dropped your wallet, someone would probably hand it back to you. Um,
yeah.
so I'm wondering if you've thought about how like our or like humans' perceptions of like the technical affordances of systems, which are like designed to be trustless, can lead to kind of misplaced trust that maybe gets like abused or like leads to negative consequences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the whole story of crypto, right? Like you have a trustless infrastructure, which, from a technical perspective, it's very robust. But there's all these other dimensions, like if you expose your wallet key, or if you click this airdrop link that some scammer sends you and then you trusted that person, right? That this has nothing to do with how robust, the trustless infrastructure of the blockchain is, but that's actually a social practice. So I think, like in discussion of trust, especially in the blockchain world, like the social aspect is very undervalued, or, it's kind of like not really discussed. And I think that's where most of the, mistrust or instances of, fraud takes place. And that's also something that I think, we do need to think about. That's why I think it's important to not only think about the trust primitives and evidence, but also what's the ritual and experience. Because I think with AI, like being trusted doesn't mean that it's necessarily trustworthy, right? And then if something is trustworthy, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's trusted by people. So I think like bridging that gap somehow becomes part of the design problem in itself.
Yeah, I just want to quickly go back to something Val mentioned. I think like you made a really good point about like how we're almost viewing AI as like humans here because like it's almost impossible to have trust on on the technical level because they're essentially black boxes in terms of what the LLM is generating. So then yeah, we have this potentially misplaced social trust because we interact with them as if they're humans, which yeah, probably already has and will cause more problems.
Yeah, ChatGPT likes to tell you what you want to hear. I don't trust that shit. Cool. Well, we have another question in the chat, but we're out of time, so I'll bring it over to the Metagov seminar channel where we can continue discussions there, if that sounds good. And Helena,
So
maybe you
yeah,
can kick off that channel by addressing Joseph's question. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for coming. Helena, welcome to Metagov as our newest research director. We're very excited to have you. Hope to see you around in the space and learn more from you and with you. So yeah, thanks for all the claps, everyone. Please, yeah, have a great rest of your day if it's morning or night if it's night. And Josh, you are.
Wait, one quick thing. I know it's been a while since I made it to a seminar, but uh, are we still doing the clapping at the end?
Yeah, we can do the clapping. I feel like everyone sent some clapping reacts, but you're right. You're right. All right, let's do it. Everyone unmute and let's give Helena a
oh my
loud round of
Three,
applause.
three, two, one, unmute.
God.
Woo.
Oh, thank you all. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to engaging more with the community.
Yeah, awesome. All right, have a great day, everyone. See you next
Thanks.
time.
Bye bye.